Happy New Year! Happy 2026. We are back. Thanks, you guys, for waiting on us so long. We had a very wild and exciting Christmas season, including the finale to Stranger Things, which we may or may not talk about. We don't know yet. We're still digesting the experience that we had in going upside down. And after I went upside down, my family was all, Casey, stop making noise in the background. We're out of practice, guys. So Stranger Things may or may not, we don't know. It's a long story out there because, we need to figure out what happened and maybe we need to sit back and digest, right? And so one of the things that happened over the course of the long break at Christmas for me and my family is we started rereading Harry Potter. Who knows why? The books were at my mom's and we got them. And this put me in mind of the continuing problem of magic and where it comes from. I mean, we had that with Stranger Things. Like, what kind of world are we imagining ourselves into that has psychic powers and monsters and telekinetic abilities and such like that? And recognizing that all of these story worlds become so powerfully real to us, it raises all sorts of very difficult and interesting questions. In the midst of all of this, because of course this is what I do, I started reading more theology, and I'd say this is a sort of second start of the new year, the new season. Like, we're in season 4 technically in Mosaic Arc, but I think 2026 is going to be different. And one thing that's going to be different is me need to start thinking more concretely about the problems of theological logic and argument. And I'm sort of curious about that because it's one of the things that I know that I need to bring into some new work that I'm going to be doing and thinking about Tolkien and his poetry, which is an old theme for us, Tolkien and poetry, but also a new theme in saying exactly what kind of power does this kind of writing have and this kind of storytelling. And interestingly enough, one of the most bitter debates oh yeah, I know you're surprised. That I got into over the Christmas break was, of course, on theology and where it comes from and how do we know things in Christian doctrine, and the sort of difference between what what those who simply grow up Catholic and are taught truth understand, and what those of us who are like me coming into the faith or into the actual, being received into the church from a different direction have about where certain ideas come from, where certain rituals come from, and so forth. And this all got tangled up into a magnificent, difficult New Year's Eve ball that included the problem of actually what our world is all about right now. I with my family was watching the Stranger Things finale on New Year's Eve, and when it finished, we walked out onto the balcony, or I did by myself and the dog. Walked out onto the balcony, and there were fireworks going off, and I felt such a moment of hope for that evening, that there was, that the monsters could be defeated, that the town was in celebration. We were entering into a new year of our Lord, AD 2026, and then everything fell apart again. And it's poignant and interesting to me how fragile that sense of hope has become. I mean, I know a lot of people right now, again, including I'm more in my family members' minds right now because we've just all seen each other and been dealing with my dog having some really unfortunate health issues and such. And there was that one little moment for about an hour, maybe on New Year's Eve, when I felt like we were winning. The monsters could be defeated. We could, and then I was back in the fall again. And of course, those of you who watched my videos on Unauthorized, where I talk about Tolkien, which I have now they're all available here on the YouTube channel. You can watch The Forge of Tolkien here in the complete series, but there's more to say. And of course, for Tolkien, one of the great challenges was ending his story. I mean, we've been talking, maybe we need to talk over the next year about how stories end well and what that means. And like, I'm not going to go into whether Stranger Things ended well or not. That's too fraught right now. However, now Casey's laughing at me. My monologue's going on a little long tonight. I think there's so many layers as usual of things. We thought we'd start with something simple. Where did Tolkien, lifelong Catholic, get his obsession with magic? See, we deliver here on the Mosaic Ark. You're going to go deep tonight. Welcome to 2026. Happy New Year! It's AD 2026. I think the one
Happy
super
New
helpful
Year.
thing I was realizing, and we were in a town that was like doing the proper New Year's celebration, and until this year, I find this very strange. And also, I think it's because I went to Mass and I understood it was not simply New Year, but it was the eve of the feast of the Solemnity of Our Lady. So there you go. Catholics do it better. I'm finally catching up. I get it. But that we actually, every single time we celebrate the new year, the calendar that we're on is of course celebrating Christ. So be of good cheer.
Yes, not Mithras.
It's Anno Domini 2026. Happy New Year. You said you had some thoughts. Oh, good. Carry on. I'm just going to drink now. I haven't.
I do have some thoughts. I have lots of thoughts. She says such interesting things. Right? So, how did Tolkien get so interested in magic, right? And he studied Christianity and magic, and it just reminded me of when my son was little. We wanted to go to Universal, and we had seen the first Harry Potter movie. We hadn't seen all of them, but I wouldn't allow him to watch it until he was old enough to understand that this was fictional witchcraft. This was fictional witchcraft and wizardry. If I thought he understood that, and this is a fictional world, and basically anything goes here, it's not an anti-Christian world, it's a fictional world. And when he understood that, we could go. And he asked to read Harry Potter, and I said, I want you to read Tolkien first. And this is before I met you. So I said, I want you to read Tolkien first, right? So he did read The Hobbit, and he absolutely loved it. And it's one of my favorite stories is when he was talking to a friend of his who had moved to California, talking to him on the phone. He had just finished reading The Hobbit. Do you have to read this? Gandalf is so much cooler in the books. You have got to read this.
Well,
and then I hear his friends say, Dad, can I use my birthday money to buy a book?
The funny, so this is a good setup, really, right? Because so we've been watching, my family's rewatching all the Harry Potter movies, and kind of out of order. So it's an interesting parallel with the Stranger Things problem of watching the kids grow up as you see the series. But okay, so with Harry Potter, there's lots of magic. Like they're going to school to learn to work spells and duel with wands, which is hilarious and cute. They salute like fencers and stuff.
Yes. Yes, they
which I've
do.
and since they're
Like,
I've also been looking at filming locations for that, and they're in all of these great castles and cathedrals and in England, and of
mm,
course the actors. Kenneth Branagh's so good as Gilderoy Lockhart,
he
and
really is
Alan Rickman as
hilarious.
Snape. Just to such a great performance,
Yes.
so wonderful. But they clearly know how to fence too. So it's like when the
Yes.
two of them get up on the table to
Well,
do
both of them stage trained for
stage trained for
decades.
fencing, right?
Yes.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's great.
Wonderful.
But the thing is, there's so much like performed magic in Harry Potter. There's almost no magic in Tolkien. This is what's so funny about
Isn't that interesting? But everybody sees it as magical, don't
everybody
they?
sees it as magical. Gandalf basically he does fireworks. So my meditation on the fireworks on New Year's Eve, and he has they're basically for Harry Potter world. It's just the first spell they learn, which is Lumos, right? Light.
Right.
First spell you learn. But otherwise, I mean, how much other magic is there actually in? I mean, is there magic in The Hobbit?
Is there magic in The Hobbit? Well,
There's
there's
the
magical
ring. There's
creatures.
magical creatures.
Yeah, there's magical creatures. There's a cursed ring.
Yes.
Is that magic? Or is
Well,
it
okay, so this is the meta problem about what Tolkien's magic is doing there is the degree to which you've said he's studied in Christianity, whether it's Christian, because
Mhm.
it's yes, curse is magic, but it's maleficium, it's evil, it's witchcraft. And maleficium
Interesting.
in the
Hmm.
proper sense is, I mean, this word is like the Malleus Maleficarum, the hammer of witches. Maleficium, technically, it's not witchcraft so much as evil, bad making,
Ah,
bad. It's like
okay.
maleficium. It's curses. So yes, a cursed ring would be magic for sure.
So
Um,
Maleficent was named very well in the story.
mm-hmm. There's Bjorn who can turn himself into a bear. So there's the shape shifting.
There's a dragon.
There's a dragon that flies. Whether dragons need magic to fly. Um,
There's giant eagles, and Gandalf can talk to them, but so could St. Francis. So I'm not sure that's magic. He
Milo just
preached
did a
to the
post, it was a
creatures.
shared post on X about people are figuring out that they figure we're going to be able to talk to animals in about 10 years. Like, here we go. So the magic, I mean, the magic always wants the same thing. Tolkien said that, it's like we want magic stories because we want to have converse with other rational creatures. So getting to talk to
Yes.
the animals is there.
Are they rational though? There's a gorilla that learned how to sign, and he could answer all kinds of questions. Um, he had never once. I don't know if this is true. So please somebody correct me if I'm wrong. He's never once asked a question. He'll answer questions, but he's never once asked one. He's not a curious creature. So does rationality have to do with curiosity?
That's a good question. See what I did there? Anyway. Well, actually, I think that's like we can train our dogs to respond to us in particular ways, which it seems to be what you're saying the gorilla is doing. He knows how
Yeah.
to give the right responses to prompts, which makes him an AI.
Um,
It's like they respond to our questions and answer our prompts, but can they ask real questions?
right. Exactly. Right.
Hmm. Okay, so here we've got some conversation going on about oh, Rogue Wave says, I've been arguing theology of Our Lady with Protestants on
That's
Social
fun.
Galactic. Okay, I can do Our Lady, right? This is what was funny about the arguments over Christmas. It was about other stuff than Our Lady, particularly history. Uh, Gandalf uses lightning magic when they attack by goblins in the Misty Mountains cave. That's good. Bomber
Okay.
fell into. Sarah says, "Hello, Sarah." Bomber fell into the river in Mirkwood and was enchanted. That's right. He falls asleep, and they have to carry him.
Mm,
The elves that have their rings and then vanish, and they have to keep getting. They get bewildered in Mirkwood by the elves.
mm.
The runes only work by moonlight, so maybe qualify as magic. Plus the dwarf door. Okay. Robert, I think, is answering different questions. So in the chat,
So
Robert
they're
is answering
enchanted.
questions about where my meta question of, can you predict where we're going with where Tolkien got his idea about magic? But anyway, first we have to establish that there is any.
Well,
So I think
yes, I
they've
think
done
I've
that.
got
Thanks,
something.
chat.
It's the objects and creatures you're talking about. They've been enchanted, right?
Mm,
They're not
mm,
people wielding spells. So it almost makes me think of sacramentals
Ooh,
a little
like
bit.
blessed. You asked about cursed
Yes,
things and blessed things.
right.
Yeah. Okay. So there's creatures and there's enchantments. Tolkien's definitely about enchantment. That is, I mean, literally, technically, what all the songs do, they enchant, and what Tom Bombadil does when he sings, chants, and tells them the stories, the great backstories of Middle Earth. And that's a kind of, you could say, is that a kind of magic? But it's not the kind of it's like, it's not the technological spells. Harry Potter tends to be, it's funny watching the movies now because our tech is catching up with
Yes,
the Hogwarts magic, like the portraits of moving pictures. Well, there you go. I see them,
I know.
I see them at bus stops now in ads.
It's
Right?
really strange, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, there was the phrase in the article you gave me to read, the chapter you gave me to read
Mm.
from Newman that uses the expression scientific magic.
Yes. Yes, and Harry Potter always struck me as very scientific magic, that they are like memory, the Ponzi. I most recently watched uh number 2. There's like you can store memories in visuals, so like they're video recordings in a way of your own experience. Everybody
Yes.
has their phone out, we can take the videos of stuff. So the visual and portraits that move.
They also have a little bit of speculative fiction in them because they're doing something that the tech lords want to do. They're
Right.
extracting their memories and holding it
Yes.
in this
Yes.
place.
Or into, sorry guys, spoiler alerts, if you haven't read Harry Potter, stop listening now. The Tom Riddle's diary talks back.
Yes.
So there's the
It has a conversation with you.
the speculative fiction of the LLMs talking to us.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. That's really good.
And well, I mean, the sort of botany, they do botany, which is herbology, and they do
Mhm.
chemistry, which is potions. They have history, which is, of course, always the thing that's necessary to establish to figure out anything that's going on in the story, which I approve. And Hermione always does her homework, so there, right?
Hogwarts
It's
for
a
history. Yes.
Hogwarts for history. You'd
She's the
think.
nerd we love.
But or like Muggle studies is basically anthropology. That pretty much all of the Defense Against the Dark Arts is dueling. All of the
Mhm.
practices that they're having, care of magical creatures, is zoology. Have scientific analogs. Um,
Yes.
the spiritual analogs are harder to get at, but the psychological, this is, I realized I was thinking about this, that the kind of torments that Voldemort puts everyone through in the later books look a lot to me like mind playing.
Oh, yes. Doesn't
Is
it?
are there
Yeah.
actually different worlds, or are we all just in the same story world overlapping over and over and over again?
Yes.
Which, yes,
Yeah, that's eerie.
they're both different, or
No, I said that's eerie.
well, okay, so
Yes.
Rogue Wave is saying any technology not sufficiently understood will appear as magic. Possibly, possibly, but it's this is the nice little exercise of saying, so our opening premise is Tolkien was obsessed with magic. We've established that he's in fact obsessed with enchantment, perhaps more so than what we would recognize as science magic. I've been playing with Grok a lot lately. Grok has been very helpful to me in certain kinds of conversations and sort of sorting through different personality type questions. I do recommend Grok for Myers-Briggs
It really
analysis.
is very helpful for all kinds of questions.
Well,
It just
as long as
switches
you
so efficiently.
know how to ask them, right?
Right, you have to ask correctly, right? Like magic. You have to say the spells right.
Well, and of course, Grok works as is a mirror. So it intensifies whatever you
Mm,
put in. So you need to be very, it's like you need to be highly disciplined, just as looking in a mirror at
yes.
yourself, like a physical mirror. You look at yourself, and do you see yourself accurately? It's New Year's, guys. Did you get your new workout videos? You know,
I was thinking of
are you looking
photographing
at
even
yourself
worse.
in the mirror and lying about how much cake you ate over Christmas?
Oh, it's just so much. Anyway, I have this delusion that I'm constantly, cooking baked goods for 20 people that are not going to be in my house at Christmas. I've tried to restrain myself, but well, I was a little successful.
We will have to do a stream on the magic of cooking, clearly, because everybody who enjoys baking always bakes for too many. That's the
Oh,
phenomenon of
okay.
cooking.
Good to know I'm
Christmas.
normal.
Oh, you are totally normal. Tyler, our last discussion was with Tyler about the Christmas movies, right? He is a great baker. But
Oh,
and
nice.
if you follow his social media, you realize he does not bake for 1, 2, 20, or 50. He bakes for the whole town. Right? He's really, really good. He's got all his grandmother's recipes. So you're in
Oh,
good
lovely.
company.
That's lovely.
Anyway, so now that we've fleshed out a bit the problem, the sort of I was asking Grok for help in triggering you guys to come hang out with us tonight, because it's been a while, and so we wanted to, we're glad that you guys are here. Um, uh, that how do I, we're always trying to get people's attention, right? The magic of the social media and the sort of spell that draws everybody in and listens to us conversation. And I asked Grok. I'm so INTJ when I ask Grok anything. It's an interesting little mirror exercise. Title for a live stream. Theme: where Tolkien got his ideas about magic. Thoughts? Okay. And what I thought about this was, it's interesting, the titles that Grok generated suggest solutions to my question.
Hmm.
Okay, so it said, here are some catchy, entertaining title suggestions for your live stream on the origins and influences behind Tolkien's unique conception of magic in Middle-earth. Recognize, I didn't say that at all. I just said where Tolkien got his ideas about magic, but now we've established it's unique. Okay. There are 10 of them. Maybe I'll read a few of them, but it's like unveiling Tolkien's magic from ancient myths to Middle-earth enchantment. Option. Where did Tolkien's magic come from? Norse roots, Elvish art, and the secret fire. The hidden sources of Middle-earth magic, Tolkien's mythological inspirations. We're getting a theme here. Tolkien's enchanted world, decoding the origins of magic in Lord of the Rings. From Odin to elves. I think Grok is showing its bias here. Tracing the real-world roots of Tolkien's magic. Real-world roots. Does that mean there's real magic? No, anyway. Magic and Goetia, Tolkien's philosophy of magic revealed. I think that it picked that up from, there's actual discussion about how there's a difference between, you're saying, is a curse thing,
Right.
right? So there's different categories of magic that people have said, oh no, Tolkien's not in the evil bad category, because he's actually dealing
Right.
with this other thing.
So maybe maybe that explains why he's a Catholic. This is related to why I wouldn't show my son the Harry Potter movies until he was old enough to understand that was fiction. I said, because in the real world, demonic activity does exist. People who call themselves witches do exist, and they're sadly deluded about the power they're seeking.
There you
And
go.
I think Tolkien was onto that, as it's a very, he had a very broad view of Christianity and theology and mythology, and he used all of that to express what I just said. My very simple mom mind was, you can't watch
You
this
can't
until
watch
you're
it
old enough to understand it.
right. But the problem with saying whether or not he's what kind of magic he's talking about. Everyone agrees there's magic in the Lord of the Rings, and then we end up with this, well, what is it? But then the sort of the source problem of his magic, according to Grok, most of the answers seem to be Norse myths. It's saying these titles aim to be intriguing and clickable, highlighting the historical mythological influences like Norse and Celtic elements. Okay, so that's if I put in a neutral question of where Tolkien got his ideas about magic, the default answer that comes up is Norse mythology. like Odin and elves. Tolkien's distinctions, that is from his letters on magic and Goetia, and elvish art versus domination, and the subtle inherent nature of magic in his works. Pick one that best fits your style or mix and match. I tried saying no subtitle, just a catchy question, and I got a similar sort of range. It's Norse roots, ancient myths, Odin and elves, right? So where Tolkien got his magic, Odin and elves. Why is there even a question here? It's obviously a pagan, well, like Norse paganism, right? It's a mythological repertoire of expectations about, I don't know, even like,
Well, he got his elf names from Norse mythology, as you pointed out to me once a long time ago. But I wouldn't say he necessarily got all of his well, he didn't get all of his ideas from it, I don't think.
well, okay,
It's
so the
complicated.
problem here is, of course, and in fact, Kidra's here. Hi, hello, welcome. Okay, we've whittled long enough that everybody's showing up finally. It's like we're getting into the meat of everything now. How was Tolkien, as a lifelong Catholic, why was he so obsessed with magic? And I said that it's like this is the problem. The problem is, as Grok has shown us, according to the sort of general internet sources that are out there, the source has nothing to do with this Catholicism. I don't think I asked it where I just said where Tolkien got his ideas of magic. It does not look to Christianity as an answer at all. And we've gestured a number of times to some of the conversations that Miri AF has done about worrying about children's literature. She included in her list of British authors who were more interested in the occult than maybe we would be comfortable with. Like you were worrying about whether or not your son should watch or read Harry Potter.
Right. And I had no problems with those books, but I just wanted to make sure he understood that this is completely fiction.
But did you worry
yeah.
with that about Tolkien? Do you have that
I didn't
sense?
worry about that Tolkien. And, I think it's because when I watch the movies and I try to read the books, that's all right. I couldn't. They're just, they're too detailed, I think, for me, for fiction. But I did enjoy the movies. And before anybody ats me, I know the books are very different. I know they're much more rich.
Everybody in the chat, at Casey,
Yeah.
and tell her she needs to read the books.
I think Tolkien is, I think what he's expressing is the spiritual world that does exist and that is informed by his Catholicism. And he's chosen mythological type themes and looks to write his story and to explain that to people.
Right, but that's not what people tend to. I mean, obviously there is a fair literature out there. Don't at me, guys. I do read it.
She writes books on it.
Well, I'm wanting to write a book about it,
it.
and so this we're subjecting.
I will read your book.
Good. I'm subjecting you guys now to let's warm up. So we've been there's all the backstory on Draco Chemicus. Yes, we finished Act 4. Yes, it's coming. Yes, we promise you, production is way harder than you think. We wish we could wave magic wands and get everybody to do the stuff that we ask. That I do want to write a book about Tolkien's prayer life. And Vox very usefully suggested to me the title Servant of the Secret Fire, which is therefore my working title, announced here tonight.
It's a cool title.
It's a great title, Servant of the Secret Fire. I think JRR Tolkien's Poetry and Poetry and the Power of Prayer. No, what did I come up with? I can't remember what my subtitle was. Anyway, Servant of the Secret Fire, which is a great description of that sense of prayer is a service, which is why on Telegram I'm on Scylla Maria, handmaiden of Mary. It's like if she'll have me, right? That
you will.
She has so much to put up with from me.
Not as much as for me, but anyway, go on.
We can on guard. Now after watching all these movies, I want a wand, right? I want the Noble collection sells like dozens of these things to all different characters. They've all got their own wand. Anyway, don't distract me. That servant and the secret fire, and the sort of big question is, of course, what is that secret fire that Gandalf says he is? He is the servant of secret fire, which is where the phrase comes from. when he's confronting the Bulgrog and saying, I am the servant of secret fire, you shall not pass. And that, it's like the degree to people seriously worry, and they're worrying about C.S. Lewis out there in the internet world now. It's like whether or not Lewis, in the way in which he talks about Christianity, is too syncretic, in his sense that, oh, look, all the mythologies actually tell the same, Joseph Campbell, the hero of the Thousand
I was
Faces
thinking
kind
that.
of
Yeah.
story. And, the difference with Christianity is it's the true one, but they're all participating in the part, they're participating in it, and therefore strike us as having some element of truth in them, blah, 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 right? Tolkien didn't actually do that with his arguments about fairy stories or mythology. He tended to go for a more myths can show us truth, but with a very specific mythology that he was working with. And yet that worries people. It's like how do we reconcile Tolkien's use of magic, enchantment, elves, giants, talking, the eagles do talk, yeah, shapeshifters, all of those kinds of characters in his stories, with his professed Catholicism? Was he just lying? Which and this, I'd say, this is a persistent problem now here in AD 2026. We don't believe anybody tells the truth anymore on anything. It's like, if you want to talk about the curses and counter curses that people are flowing at each other on the internet, it's liar,
Yeah.
liar, liar,
Mm-hmm.
constantly.
Yeah. He wrote fiction. Is all fiction a lie, or is it a story? Is there a difference between a story and a lie? What does a lie have at, what is its purpose? It's to deceive, but for what purpose? It can be for a good purpose or a bad purpose. Some people think that there's no good purpose for a lie, to which I say, hey, you got any Jews hidden under the floorboards? Are you going to say no?
Right.
Are you going to say yes? They're right over here. Are you going to pretend that you don't know, in which case you're just really saying, yes, they're right over here? Sometimes you have to lie to do good. And fictional story, it can do good. It can also do bad. Some stories are bad. I don't think JRR Martin writes stories that are edifying, from what people tell me
Not
about
having
how
read
he
them.
ended them.
Well,
Yeah.
well, okay. So anyway, we're not doing endings right now. We're doing like beginnings and origins and where stuff comes
Oh, he
from.
wrote it. He wrote that. I mean, even writing under the title J.R.R. Martin, right? He was trying to mimic Tolkien, only doing it in a way that was probably less Christian, because I think people know how Christian he was, and they wanted to do the opposite if they weren't. He wanted a response to The Lord of the Rings, and I think that's why he wrote it.
Oh, yeah, and it's George R. R. Martin, actually, so GRR. But you're right. It's it's
Sorry.
playing off
Yeah.
of the famous JRR.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a bit of an irony that they both end up with two R's. How do you manage that?
I don't know. I
Well,
will say I call myself KJ Crilly, but J really is my middle name. J.K. Rowling does not have a middle name, so there.
Oh, the K, she just stuck in there so that she had two
She
initials.
stuck it in there. So that she had two initials. Yes.
She did it also to gender neutral her author name.
Smart. I think it was smart. I do. Because women write literature, and then if suddenly you're women's lit, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unfortunate.
Well, it also paralleled with J.R.R. Tolkien. So J.K. Rowling, that she has the signaling that you're going to be in a particular kind of story with the
maybe.
I'm not sure. Anyway, how do we? I do actually sometimes write out my questions so that I can make sure that I ask Grok the right thing, or our conversation, right? Because getting the question, this is a meta thing that I hadn't realized was going to be helpful. Getting the question that you ask right is everything. You're talking to the robots. It's like you said, like, you have to say the spells correctly. You have to ask the questions correctly. Otherwise, you're going to get garbage answers. This is true of all scholarship.
You mean everything's garbage in, garbage out? Is
Oh my,
that it?
fascinating that, or
Funny that.
including for the unauthorized subset of people, that Vox has just published his book on. He's finally caught up with C.S. Lewis. Good job. C.S. Lewis did a great essay that's about like the modern mythology, which is on evolution as a myth. And Vox, our friend Vox, is just published how mathematically that's the case as well. So I guess Vox has done the John Henry Newman on theology, but oh, never mind. Too many layers. That
Her
now
mind is many, many,
I
many,
this
many
is me.
layers.
This is my life. I like. Okay, you got to set the questions up right. That he's showing that the science is not actually getting good answers is of course because they've been asking the questions wrong. And I noticed that when I
Mm.
sat in on a lot of, science classes 20, 25 years ago, and my colleagues would be looking at the data and I'd be saying, you phrased the question wrong. It's like,
Yeah.
how did, and everything, all of the results depend on how you set up the question and how you phrase the question. So the magic of getting truth out of oracles is ask the question correctly. Ask the question well, because they will mirror back at you your own your own bad
Or
questions.
they'll assume you mean something you don't. I had a hilarious discussion with Grok
Yeah.
a couple of months ago, and I asked it a question. I was looking for a piece of information I caught off the internet. I swear I'll make a long story short.
I don't know. I'm
About
not doing it
50
tonight, so we might as well just.
Well, about 15 years ago, I decided to do a bit of research for a story I wanted to write, which is still swimming around in my head 15 years later. But I thought, where is that? I thought I'd saved it, but I'd changed computers a couple of times. I'm going to ask Grok where I can find this bit of information. It really was nothing more than a note that a student wrote somewhere in Ireland when they were researching the foundation of a Masonic temple during the Act of Union. That was it. And it was really just a couple of lines from a letter that somebody wrote 200 and something years ago. And I said, I want to see that letter again. And Grok said, it doesn't exist. I said, well, no, I know it does exist. And I had this really long conversation with it. And it kept assuming why I was asking and saying there's absolutely no evidence of blah, 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 blah. And then I'd have to correct it and say, I didn't actually say that. I asked this specific question. And I went, oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. You're right. You did not ask that question. So I had to keep refeeding the question in, but I just kept it going until it gave me my answer, which was finally, oh, if it's that old, it probably isn't around anymore because there are different computer systems and students use that don't exist anymore. And it was a real simple answer. I'm like, yeah, that's probably true.
Yes, so that our actual the hilarity of our deep history on the servers is only what's been put on the servers.
Exactly.
And
They didn't transfer it over. It's one
right.
server. It was like some student was using it in a library somewhere in Dublin in like, I don't know, 1995 or something. So it didn't get transferred over because it just wasn't important.
But it's like the past doesn't exist in that
strange,
sense.
isn't
It's
it?
very, very no, that's incredibly important point because we live in this moment. This is terrifying and real when people don't believe in the past. They don't believe in history. They don't believe anything came from the past. And this is Hermione as the one who actually recognizes that you need to know the backstory of the institution in order to like find the basilisk that's haunting Hogwarts. Footnote, the plumbing, never mind. But there's this sense of truth is simply real and it simply exists now, and so we'll ask the AIs and they'll spit out truth because it's just there, rather than that it's like where did their knowledge come from? How do we have that sense of reality of this information? The stories that we're telling now on the computers are 20 years old at most. Like there's nothing there.
Yes,
It's
that's it. And that was the time frame Grok answered finally was like about if it's older than 20 years, it's probably not on there. Unless somebody goes into this library at Trinity, finds the piece of paper and scans it in.
Okay, that's the best metaphor I've heard of for what people think about Christianity. Seriously, this is everybody on the internet is throwing spells at each other. Gotten to my point finally, half an hour in. 40 minutes in. 45. Oh, it takes a long time. See, throwing spells at each other, screaming at each other about being liars because they have this completely shallow sense of, okay, the Eastern Orthodox is one tradition. They don't even know what tradition is. The Eastern Orthodox is one set of doctrines. The Roman Catholics are another set of doctrines. The Protestants, with all of their denominations, are another set of doctrines. And it's as if they exist all in this perpetual now that has no roots. So you can't, I mean, my big thing arguing, of course, I grew up Presbyterian. This was a lot of my family conversations. I made grown men cry with my insight here. It was lovely.
That's a sweet story, by the way, people. It's not mean.
No, it was very, I mean, it's like, because I was talking to some people at my mom's church. She's Presbyterian still. I'm still working on her. And trying to convince her the reason I became Catholic is because I was such a good Presbyterian. I was, incredibly devout Presbyterian, like ridiculously so. Hermione level Presbyterian, that you want to read everything and know all the backstory, and that's what I did.
Scott Hahn level.
I turned into what?
Scott Hahn level. He was also a Presbyterian.
Scott Hahn was a Presbyterian. Ended up in the same place I did, Catholic. So
the same way you did, reading
and going into the history and saying, if you see the backstory of Christianity, it's all of these different traditions that we have now. It's like the crown of a giant tree. And this is why the man I was talking to burst into tears, because it was like, yes, isn't that what we want? We all want to be sitting under this tree with Tolkien.
Isn't that beautiful?
I think so. I think this is a very hopeful and loving response to the kinds of debates that people keep getting into on the internet, which is only 20 years worth of data old, or 50 years. It's not old enough. It's a child of information, so that you're arguing with an entity or, a network that can't tell you the deep past.
I have a semi-related story. So the EPA, when it wants to look at, or at least when it used to want to look at where a river goes, right? When they're trying to pass regulations for water usage or even construction and things like that, they need to know, flood zones. They look at flood zones and things like that. EPA, that's part of what EPA does. A lot of government agencies do that. But one of the things they always did was find the oldest person they could in the town that remembered what it looked like 80 years ago, and they would just interview them. That's it. And they interviewed this one guy in the town I used to live in, and he was an old dude, and he said, "Oh, where all these houses are, that was the river. They moved it. That's a real bad place to put these houses."
Chicago just drowned last night because we had a massive rainstorm and the streets are just flooded. We live right next to a giant lake, right, on mud.
Well, right. And it's marshland, right? It's very high water table there. Yeah, same with where I used to live, at least down by the river. Of course, all rivers are like this, but you can imagine this guy when he was like a teenager or a young man, say in the 1930s or 40s, because this article's about 20 years old, and he's watching them put these houses up, just shaking his head like, "What are you doing?" But nobody would listen to him. Who's he? Who are you? I'm putting houses up here. Shut up. And then 50 or 60 years later, they're interviewing him, saying, "Where did this river used to go?" He's probably thinking, "Yes,
finally, they're listening to me."
Tell them how stupid they were.
Well, so this and the thing is, the way Tolkien. So I'd say we don't understand where Tolkien gets his fascination and obsession with enchantment, because we actually don't understand Christianity. And the kinds of arguments that people get into saying this, I think I am now persuaded. Of course, look, the Weasleys are Catholic. Is it not more? Could it not be more plain?
It's pretty obvious.
It's totally plain. They're all red haired, and there's 7 of them, right?
Yeah.
What I find, of course, what's fascinating about all of this is magic is somehow this. One that with Stranger Things, we were dealing with the alternate hell of where the magic was coming from, and it's all government organized and stuff like that. With Harry Potter, you're dealing with, there's this totally parallel community that is invisible to most of the regular world, and has a very interesting attachment to magic. So Tolkien has, in trying to, trying to make sense, trying to explain to my friends, my family, where I get my sense of how to study Christianity. I of course got it from Tolkien because I was obsessed with him long before I was obsessed with anything else. Because I read Tolkien, as everybody knows, when I was 11. He in one of his letters that he writes to Michael, his son. He has several very thoughtful letters that he wrote to Michael. They're clearly in long conversations about a lot of stuff. And in one of them, he's talking about, he's writing in 1967, and he's upset with Vatican II. The church, which once felt like a refuge, now often feels like a trap. There's nowhere else to go. What should I do without that? But the answer for him was never running away from the church. It's more, I think, what I have done is saying, there are, of course, various elements in the present situation which are confused, though in fact distinct. But there's bad. Well, anyway, my whole setup has failed. One, because Tolkien, when he writes these letters, he's usually rambling around talking about 18 different things when you get to them. And so if you want to like pull out
it's like you.
yes, like me, pull out the one little excerpt that actually makes sense. Anyway, so he's talking about the history of Christianity. He's talking about where actual like understanding and dogma comes from. The Protestant, quote, search backwards for simplicity and directness, which, of course, though it contains some good or at least intelligible motives, is mistaken and indeed vain. So we may be having problems now in the church, but looking for simplicity and directness is not the right direction. Because primitive Christianity is now, and in spite of all research, will ever remain largely unknown. Because primitiveness is no guarantee of value and is and was in great part a reflection of ignorance. Grave abuses were as much an element in Christian liturgical behavior from the beginning as now. So you're not going to solve all of these problems that we're having by saying, okay, we're just going to go back to the primitive simplicity that we can't find anyway, because in fact it never existed. I mean, there's arguments in Acts over circumcision. So there's liturgical and ritual arguments from the very beginning of the story. Still more, he said, still more, this primitiveness is not going to work. Still more, because my church was not intended by our Lord to be static or remain in perpetual childhood. This is the essential problem. But to be a living organism, likened to a plant, which develops and changes in externals by the interaction of its bequeathed divine life and history, the particular circumstances of the world into which it is set. There's no resemblance between the mustard seed from the parable and the full-grown tree. For those living in the days of its branching growth, the tree is the thing. For the history of a living thing is part of its life, and the history of a divine thing is sacred. The wise may know that it began with a seed, but it is vain to try and dig it up, for it no longer exists, and the virtue and powers that it now had reside in the tree. Very good. But in husbandry, the authorities, the keepers of the tree, must look after it, according to such wisdom as they possess, prune it, remove cankers, rid it of parasites, and so forth, with trepidation, knowing how little their knowledge of growth is. But they will certainly do harm if they are obsessed with the desire of going back to the seed, or even to the first youth of the plant when it was, as they imagine, pretty and unafflicted by evils. The other motive, now so confused with the primitivist one, even in the mind of any one of the reformers, aggiornamento, which is, of course, what Vatican II was up to.
Yeah.
Bringing up to date. That has its own grave dangers, as has become apparent throughout history. With this, ecumenicalness has also become confused. Okay, there's a lot like buried in there, but the central image and that I want everybody to hear is the tree, and that the church and its doctrine and its tradition and its liturgy is all part of its living organism. It's alive. It grows. It's like Jesus says, you have faith like a mustard seed, that image of you plant a seed and it grows. You can't go back to the seed. You're in the tree. You're under the tree now. We're in the tree. We're 2026 years into the growth of this magnificent sacred thing. And we need to know its history.
Well, that's funny because a lot of the people who are big fans of Vatican II, it's such a strange phrase, Vatican II,
Mm.
because it seems to encompass whatever over the past 50, 60 years, it seems to encompass whatever fashion somebody wants to put on it because we're supposed to be doing things, we can do things new now. But one of the new things they wanted to do was to go back to the original and
Yes.
say, and
Yes.
say, we're all going to give the kiss of peace now, which is just weird and disrupts the mass in a lot of people's opinions. But it's they'll say we want to do that. But it's like, are the women going to cover their heads again? No, no, that's at the beginning, but we're not going to do that now. I don't mind people not doing that. I don't do that myself. But to say that we're going to do it because they were doing that in the first century is similar to saying we're going to do anything because they were doing it in the first century.
Well, so that's accurate to what he's upset with. It's saying, say, we'll solve all these conflicts and confusion about what's the truth by just going back to the beginning. And he said, well, we're
It's
in
fundamentalism.
we're in time, we're in history, we're in the image of this. I mean, that they did this portrait session with him with this tree is quite lovely because it's the tree image is so powerful for him in all of his writing and throughout his life that you're in the presence of a magnificent living giant. I mean, his ints are giants, right? They're trees, and
Oh,
and that the tree is it grows differently according to the place where it's planted. Where like we've learned a little bit about oak planting. They come out all gnarly and cool like the English oaks if you cut them all down and let them all grow up individually. Whereas Baltic oaks were planted and harvested in a way that they grew really straight. So
oh, right.
same exact tree, circumstances of its growth is going to make it look completely different as a wood. So Tolkien, I mean, that's the sort of
It's a
magic.
fantastic metaphor.
It's a fantastic metaphor, but it's interesting that, and therefore it's been for me, for all of my work, for all of my life as a scholar, I'm looking at the growth of the devotions, the practices, the understanding, and it has to happen in time. I mean, there's this sense that what he's trying to say is it has to happen in time because it's a living
Mhm.
thing.
Like a tree.
Gee, I wonder where he got this idea. Okay. And so this is what's funny. I came to because I was, obsessed with these fights that I was having about where doctrine came from and whether or not whether we have the truth and stuff, and trying better to explain about why this is actually I think people, have I said this correctly yet? People think of truth as something that's simply there. It's either true or not, and digging into the story of how it came about is worthless because it's just true, right? I mentioned this in my parent my not parent stream, my parallel stream with my fencing friend Carolina, talking about going to
Mhm.
mass. and
Yeah.
and the obligation to go to mass. I'm like, what kind of thing is that? I don't know. I don't know where that came from. I don't know about that from in those terms from blah 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 blah. And of course, for you guys who are used to this, it's of course you do that. Why would you question it?
Well, I did question it at some point. I asked a priest point blank, "Well, what do I need to do that for?" And he answered my question. Funny enough,
How did he
right?
answer it?
Because he answered it by saying because the church made a decision, which means they talked about it a long time ago, that the best way to keep the Lord's Day,
Mm.
to keep that commandment, was to attend mass. And so that's why it's part of your obligation to uphold the 10 commandments, and they've decided that's the way it's going to be done.
I
And
see. I've
now
never no medieval treatise that I've read on the mass, and I've read a bunch of them, has ever said that because
I wonder
they
if
thought of mass as a daily obligation. For the priests, it is.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So
Well, yeah, for the priest, it is a daily obligation. For the congregants, I don't know that maybe that was regional. I mean, which is entirely possible with different bishops. But universally, it's been that way. I don't know how long. I didn't ask him how long.
1903. 1903.
Okay,
It's
so the
recent.
first that would be the first catechism that was published.
Right. And so
Okay,
this
anyway,
is it's like saying I have, ridiculous depth on Marian doctrines, and therefore, understanding why we can say appropriately that she's the Immaculate Conception, which is relevant to Tolkien, or why, she was bodily assumed. I have no Protestant barriers for me, no problem. Tell me it's a mortal sin not to go to Mass every Sunday, unless you're like prevented by things that seem to be variable depending on exactly what your priest thinks as how serious it is, that like there was a terrible rainstorm or your dog was throwing up. I mean, which of these things will count? It's these sorts of questions arise, and that's how you end up with answers. Like you said, your priest said,
Yeah, right.
so there's none of this. And this is where the Protestants in the online conversations get very upset now. They say, well, all of these things that you Catholics do, like, indulgences and purgatory and the Virgin Mary and stuff, it's not in the original text. And you're like, what? Nothing is.
Yeah,
not even
the
the choice of the text that you say that you're going to use to make these claims about it's only in the text are clear.
Yeah, there was a quote in here in the Newman article he gave me from Julian, and I assumed this was Julian the Apostate.
Yes, it is.
What was written he was recalling one of the kings in discussion between the Christians and the Arians, and the suggestion was, well, let's go to this holy place and talk to these people, and let's talk about your question. And the Arian response was, well, all we need are the scriptures. And I went, oh my gosh, sola scriptura is that old?
Oh yeah, but the questions repeat for sure.
Yeah, and then they considered anything else to be magic, and that sounded real familiar too.
Oh really?
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yes, that's just superstition.
How
that's
very
just
interesting.
Superstition. Right.
Huh.
So they were taking what their pagan ancestors thought. Actually, they weren't even doing that. They were taking what their Roman, their Roman ancestors or their Roman overlords thought about all these different lower religions that were, and he shoved Christianity. The Romans shoved Christianity in with that. That it was just another superstitious religion. What bothered them the most, though, was that it made them question themselves and what they were doing. They hated that.
The ancient pagans.
That the pagans, that the Romans hated that the Christians, their beliefs made them constantly question themselves. There were some pagans that also did kind of, self-flagellation, but that was, they kind of exposed that. They thought it was a money-making scheme. They kind of stuffed all the magicians and the Christians and the Jews all together into these lower religions that were fooling people. But what bothered a lot of the writers in this chapter that he's repeating the most was that they were just sad, and they're not supposed to enjoy things. They're not supposed to enjoy money, and they're not supposed to enjoy
the Christians
they don't have beautiful temples, right? The Christians, right? I mean, it was easy to see why they would outlaw, because the Romans were big into order. They would outlaw fortune telling. They would outlaw magicians because people were being, they were being taken for their money, which I suppose was less tax money for them. It ruined public order. The Christians didn't do any of that, but it was kind of like, well, we just don't like you anyway. What happened was the temples were emptying.
This certainly sounds Christian. Familiar. It's like, the sort of, the Christians are engaging in magic, and they're a superstition.
Well, the Arians said that. The Romans also thought they were very superstitious, but they called it excessive superstition. And they made that distinction. They were excessively superstitious. They were suspicious that they were engaging in practices that some of the pagans whose activities they were starting to outlaw. It really depends on who the emperor was at the time, obviously. But that they would meet in secret, that they would meet at night, that they didn't enjoy meat, right? So they abstained. So the Romans loved their feasts, and the Christians didn't do that. And so they were suspicious, and they thought it was extreme and excessive. And so they called it kind of an excessive superstition. They didn't mind a little superstition so long as you're a good Roman, but that was excessive. And it was emptying the temples.
So this is Tolkien's talking about how we're not going to solve things by going back to the primitive and the simple, and it's not really there. This suggests maybe Well, okay, so we have the idea that Tolkien is working with the church as a living organism, and 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 that he, well, you guys, you have to get all these steps in the right place, because everybody always gets confused at this point, starts screaming. Um, we're worried about whether or not magic is a cult or not Christian. Guys online, I think I realize I'm always channeling this sort of flat level of hysteria that I perpetually witness, where we're always trying to seek out and point to and saying that's the diabolical, not even that's diabolical, that's the corrupting and misleading, and you shouldn't be reading Harry Potter or Tolkien or Lewis or any of these guys, because they're all simply, trying to lure you away from the truth, which is, and the something else, right? And add it in there. And yet Tolkien seems to be, in his own life and concerns, incredibly Christian. And I said that one of the things that we don't understand is what he even means by that. Okay, so one, that we're in a living organism. Two, that there's, of course, history to it. And his own history is actually extremely important here. For everybody who doesn't think Tolkien is Catholic, you've just dissed his mom. Because as he wrote to Michael as well, he's writing these late in life. This is from 1965. When he's telling Michael, he's telling his son sort of his about things that happened in his life before the children were born. And one of the things he's thinking about is his mom. When I think of my mother's death, worn out with persecution, poverty, and largely consequent disease, she died when he was 12, and she was in her 30s, of diabetes.
It's diabetes, I think.
Yes. Disease. In the effort to hand on to us small boys the faith, and remember the tiny bedroom she shared with us in rented rooms in a postman's cottage at Rednall, where she died alone, too ill for viaticum. She didn't get to take mass at the end. I find it very hard and bitter when my children stray away from the church. This is not a man who's like trying to lure you into occultism, I think, probably, unless he's lying to his own children in his letters. So, enough with the Tolkien was lying about being Catholic. Of course, Canaan seems different to those who have come into it out of the desert, and the later inhabitants of Jerusalem may often seem fools or knaves, or worse. But in hoc urbe lux solemnis has seemed to be steadily true. The solemn light in this city. I have met stuffy, stupid, undutiful, conceited, ignorant, hypocritical, lazy, tipsy, hard-headed, cynical, mean-grasping, vulgar, snobbish, and even, I guess, immoral priests in the course of my peregrinations. But for me, and this is, okay, so one, his mom, who died to be Catholic, and he's trying to explain to Michael here that he sees her, she was in effect martyred to the faith in some respects, because when she converted to Catholicism, her Anglican family cut her off. And I mean, so for some time, she and her two boys were living in, pretty severe poverty for the period, and so bad that she contracted diabetes and died. And
the exact same thing happened to St. Elizabeth Ann Seton.
Oh yeah,
cut off by her. She was a widow, cut off by her family. She had 5 children for converting to Catholicism, and similarly, they were Anglican in New York.
Okay. So this, I take it quite hard when people pretend to think that they can say, well, Tolkien's magic has got to be, pagan and Celtic, and pagan and therefore superstitious, but not in that sense of it will lure us away from the light.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I think the pagans want to claim him. The Catholics want to brag about him. And there's quite a few evangelicals who want to pretend he's not Catholic, or at least his stories aren't Catholic, so it's okay for us to read them because they're fans and they're trying to excuse it away. And I'm like, I don't think you can separate it. He didn't write a story about Catholicism, but he's a Catholic who wrote a story, and his Catholicism informed his story.
Which is what he says. It was a fundamentally religious Catholic work.
Mm.
and that the Lord of the Rings has always that feeling of faith. Okay, so his mother died for it, and then when she died, she gave him to he and his brother to the wardship of the the man that he mentions now. But for me, one Father Francis outweighs them all. And he was an upper class Welsh Spaniard Tory and seemed to some just a pottering old snob and gossip. He was and he was not. I first learned charity and forgiveness from him, and in the light of it pierced even the liberal darkness out of which I came, knowing more about Bloody Mary than the mother of Jesus. So he knew more English history than he did. And Bloody Mary is in the Queen Mary, who persecuted the Protestants between Henry and Elizabeth, right? So he knew more about the Queen Mary than the mother of Jesus, who was never mentioned, mother of Jesus, never mentioned, except as an object of wicked worship by the Romanists. Okay, so
Oh, good grief.
he's frustrated with the Protestants who think you can just go back to the primitive seed. And he's talking about, my mother died to bring us, he's writing to his son, your grandmother died to bring us to the faith. And Father Morgan, who was his guardian in the time when he and his brother were in the orphanage, was this, Welsh Spaniard. His father was Welsh and his mother was Spanish, I think. So Tolkien says he loved, both Welsh as a language and Spanish, because Morgan was, the father. He's the Dumbledore of Tolkien's line, right? That he takes care of them when they're orphans and going to school.
Nice.
And this matters greatly because this is where they went to Mass when they were growing up. It's a little grander now than it was when Tolkien was serving at Mass there, because they were building this building. But this is the Brompton Oratory.
It's beautiful. That blue marble. Wow.
This is the church that was under construction when Tolkien was in middle school, and where he was.
That's amazing.
Where Father Morgan was, taking care of him and Hilary, his brother. And this, I think, is it's like you want a super key to where Tolkien's interest in magic come from. It's here. Shall we tell them how?
Sure.
Oh, sure. Well,
I don't know what he's going to say.
Well, this is good. It's like your question, my question about Mass, and when, not daily Mass, because Tolkien went to Mass daily. When he was growing up, he was serving Mass daily in this church that was under construction at the time. That the feeling of obligation to be present at the Mass for Tolkien was enormous. And he, when he talks about he fell away and he wasn't as, devout as he was, does that mean he just went like every Sunday? It's hard to judge exactly how, he considers himself not properly Catholic in periods when he's not properly Catholic, because he was so Catholic. He was so interested in practicing the liturgy and being present at the sacrament, and quite conscious of the fact that it's interesting now. I don't know. It's like it's the world of being. How do I say this? I grew up as a Presbyterian, so I grew up in the mainstream WASP culture of the United States. Becoming Catholic has shown me that there's a completely parallel world that I was never completely aware of until now. And the beautiful thing about recognizing I need to go to Mass, even if I'm traveling, and okay, I'm going to figure out how and I'm going to get there, is thanks to going to Mass all through Christmas, made them all. I'm not going to be proud about it. Yay. With confession and then going to all of them, is you're in this network of churches, right? It's like I went to Mass first in Chicago before we left town, and then I went to Mass in my mom's city in Texas, and then we were in New Mexico and I went to Mass there, and it's all the same, or it is or it isn't. It's like, the ideal of it is it's all the same because you're in the same liturgy. Of course, it's Novus Ordo. I go to Latin Mass here, and then Novus Ordo, and then there's Novus Ordo in Spanish.
Yes. And I went to it in Polish once by accident.
Right. but the thing is, you're in this, like, talk about the sort of networked magic world of all of these different places. You're suddenly in the presence of the greatest, well, magic that the world actually knows, which is the consecration of the Eucharist,
Mm.
or the consecration of the people who were baptized, who were there to be in the midst of the Mass. Now, how I've lost my thread. I'm too tired from being up with the dog.
Just thinking too much.
What?
You're thinking too
I'm
much.
thinking too much. Well, I think the thing is, I feel like Tolkien. I desperately want you all, like with Tom Bombadil, I want to sing the story of the backstory of the story that we're in that will enchant you. And I think some of the sorrow that I'm feeling right now, which is enormous and heavy on me, now I'll burst into tears, is how hard it is to help people hear this. It's like people get actually angry at you when you're trying to show them all of these layers. And I don't
Don't let them.
well, the thing is, but the problem is I don't understand the anger. And it
Okay, but
here's
don't let it affect you, right?
fair enough. But you haven't sat across from the table from some of my family members and had to deal with this. Maybe you're in your own family members. Everybody, think of your family. And I mean, it's like there's other layers
No,
of.
but I grew up in Protestant America. But go on.
See,
I've had the conversations.
we can all sympathize because
Yeah.
because you're trying to tell them about this world, this reality that is in their midst, and to tell them that and
Yes.
to show them that and to say it's actually here and it's real and it's beautiful. And then, everybody from our previous live streams that, I drive from here across Route 66 down to Texas and, straight through the interstate world, which is always both exhilarating and depressing because it's, it depends on whether you're looking at the landscape or the billboards, right? The icons
Well,
of
the billboards could be
commerce.
fun.
Well, some of them are. The icons of commerce and division and appeal, or Fudge Factory, right? It's
I was
like
just thinking that the Fudge Factory.
it's still there. The Fudge Factory is still there. Why people get angry when you're trying to show them the reality of this growth, the living
I have
organism.
an idea.
Why?
I think it's because they know it's there and they don't want it to be because it's scary and it means they have to change their life. And so they don't want to talk about it.
But it's just true. It's this beautiful truth of the growth of the understanding.
Okay. Well, if you're talking to people who don't share your faith, your particular faith, or maybe it's a different one. Well, yeah, it depends. It depends on. See, I think you're talking about two different things here. So let's
Okay.
focus on the Marian doctrine, because I think that was the discussion that we're having when you said you're trying to peel back the layers of the history, and people might get upset when you do that.
Well, I know they do, but I find, so for example, this chapel that we're looking at right now is dedicated to the Immaculate Conception.
Mhm.
It's interesting that so Tolkien, like me, always folds in everything in all, it's like layers. So he's talking about Father Morgan, he's talking about priests, he's talking about what he was taught about the history of England versus knowing anything about the Mother of Jesus.
Right.
That yes, it's the Brompton Oratory, the Birmingham Oratory is the parish church of the Immaculate Conception. And I was trying to say, I understand the Immaculate Conception is only declared as dogma in 1854. It's present liturgically in the East first as the Feast of Her Conception, and then in the West it's taken up by the English Church. It's suppressed by the Normans under Lanfranc. It's revived under the King Henry I in the 12th century. The English get a very great devotion to Mary in celebrating this Feast of the Conception, and in the 13th century with the Franciscans who come from England. First, the Franciscans come from Italy, and they end up with Franciscans, men becoming Franciscan in Italy, in England. And then they go to Paris, and in Paris in the 13th century, they're making arguments about theology in this way. Like, you have to make it all logical, and you have to make it all make sense. And exactly how can you have a doctrine of her being immaculately conceived when that means she's not saved? None of these things are new, guys. She's not saved by Jesus if,
Right.
in fact, she's conceived without sin. And the great Franciscan from England, John Duns Scotus, comes up with an argument that suggests, well, it's fitting, it's appropriate to believe this. It doesn't seem wrong to carry this as something in our faith, because logic, it's fitting. It's like, and it's like God could do it. It's fitting that he did it, and therefore it's appropriate for us to consider that he did it. And it sticks there for like several hundred years. Of the Franciscans suggest that it's fitting, the Dominicans suggest that it's not. And so there's huge debates for hundreds and hundreds of years between,
Right. And
like,
what do they mean by
saints.
fitting?
Just fitting, like it's just appropriate. I mean, literally decet.
Yeah.
That's the
So
Latin word. It's just fitting.
it's reminding me of the recent the recent announcement by Pope Leo that they were not going to refer to Mary under the title of co-redemptrix, and there was a whole lot of social media freaking out about it. And as you're just talking, I'm thinking, well, I kind of agree with him. I don't think it's appropriate. I
See,
don't think it's fitting.
you'd be with the
It just
Dominicans
doesn't
thinking
fit.
it's not fitting to talk about her as the
Yeah.
Immaculate Conception, where the
And
Franciscans are going, yes, it
it's
is.
just, and the thing is, it's just the name, right? Because it's like it implies something different to people than I think what is meant, and therefore it should not be used. Is my thinking of it. So when I asked, I said, "What do they mean by fitting?" Because that's what I was thinking. It doesn't mean it isn't true, right? So it was dogmatically declared in the 19th century, but it was almost like let's just stop arguing about it now. I'm going to make a decision, right?
The Immaculate Conception.
It's the Immaculate Conception.
Yes,
This is
and
one of her official titles.
that's literally what the definition does. It just says, here's the definition, and we're going with that, and it's declared in 1854. Ironically, now it's one of the things massively divides the church. When I think in 1854
Mhm.
when they declare it, the hope is that it's going to help solve things. Haha, don't do
Yeah.
as soon as you declare something to define it, you've like split everybody else off with well, no, I don't agree with that definition.
Well, that's when becoming, being Catholic makes the rubber hit the road, I suppose. You know,
Well,
you have
yeah.
to accept the authority.
Okay, so
For dogmatic things, you do, not for everything. I mean, I think Leo's got some just pathetically bad takes on a lot of things. I don't
are
think that
you
was one of
standing?
them.
Are you disagreeing with the Pope?
About lots of things, sure, all the time, but not dogma.
Well, the only ones
Right,
they've
because that's
actually
different.
declared are 1854 Immaculate Conception and the
Right.
1950 Assumption.
Very,
So I worked
very
on those,
infrequent.
right? I don't have any problem with those. It's these other
Right.
novelties that they keep inventing.
Yeah, it's very infrequent that they actually do something like this because it's very infrequent that it's needed.
Well, okay, so this is the excellent example of this problem that people get wrangled up into of what counts as the reality of the doctrine. And it's at the level that I think we've finally done it. We're an hour and a half in, and we'll do part 2 next week.
Did we do something right?
Well, the thing is, what we are here. The Mosaic Arc is a very experiential sort of exercise. So you guys got to just like flow with
Yes.
us, because I can give you definitions of everything. I've written a lot. I've published books. I've published articles, and people still get mad at me. So I'm trying, because I don't read my stuff. You got to read it to like get the benefit of the reading part. But
Some people just like being mad, and you gotta accept that.
well, okay, that could be it too. But the sort of way we come to the truth in our media environment, and I'm also thinking about this as a huge like media rupture. We were talking a little bit ago about how the internet doesn't know stuff unless it's been fed into the computers.
Yeah.
And so its memory of things is incredibly shallow.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with media revolutions is their ruptures. There was other things I was thinking about at New Year's, of how it feels like we've gone through the birth of this new world. I think we're in it now. We were far enough into it, like the AI kind of thing. It's like, okay, we're already dealing with that. We're talking to Grok and stuff. Um, Something feels like it's gone. Um, of whatever it is that we've been wrestling with through the last several decades. And we are
It feels like it's
now
changing.
the water, we've passed the water, we've gone, I don't know what the right metaphor is, through the veil, out of the underground, through the upside down, who knows, right? We're now in a new reality that
We're at the bottom of Niagara Falls.
it's going to make it difficult to remember all of the previous stuff. It's people can't read anymore because they're so absorbed into the media of the
They,
internet. They
well,
can't they
let's,
can't
yeah.
understand how you read because they want it to come to them in, I mean, hopefully in this format, or in, the social media format, the mosaic format we've been talking about. And
Mhm.
when the world has gone through these major media transformations, like the one from the Middle Ages to the early modern period, it's not just that it was socially disruptive and things. It's like the reality of everybody's understanding changed.
Mm.
I need more water. The other thing that happens when you go through these transformations is the debates of the past don't make any sense anymore.
Well, the historical debates never made any sense if you didn't read the historical context. We discussed that before, but when we were discussing Bleak House. I think people can, as in they are capable of doing it. They just have to be told how, and they have to be told the steps. And most importantly, as Dorothy Parker said about writing, you just need to apply ass to seat,
Mm.
right? And just sit down and read. There's no easier way around that. It just, I mean, in my case, I don't absorb things easily when I read them. I can read very fast,
Hmm.
especially since I started writing with you and started reading more block text.
See,
I
practice
started
works.
reading. It works, right? But I will still have to read it two and sometimes three times, but two or three times if especially if it's an older historical document, 100 years old or
Hmm.
older, where they're using a lot more detailed, archaic language. I can understand that. Dictionaries still work, even the online ones. People, even in a Bing search, you can actually look up archaic words and find the definitions of them.
Right.
So I'll have to read them two and three times. But if I do enough of these, I won't, right? Because if I'm reading enough of this particular time period, which is about 120 years ago, the reading of it will just become much easier. It's just people. It's like your brain is a muscle and it needs to be worked out. It's not getting a good workout with Grok. Grok is fun, and it's great for finding where to go to get these texts, like what texts I should be looking at if I'm looking up information on, oh, I don't know, health or exercise or history or something like that. I could say, what are the references for this? And they'll give me the references and I'll just bing. I can actually go find them.
Hmm.
I can go find them on the Internet Archive, usually for free. A lot of these really old books. It's a wonderful tool. People need to be told how to use it, and they need to be told that there's no easy way to do it other than just sitting and reading. And then over time, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So I think they can do it. I just think that I think people like us, and people out there listening to us, need to be conscious of the need to tell, especially younger people, people in high school and in middle school, because in my experience, most of their teachers, not all of them, there's some really good ones out there, but most of them aren't bothering. They're saying, Google it.
Well,
They ask a
because they've
question, but they don't want
okay.
to answer it.
So this at a meta level is actually absolutely essential to what we're trying to unpack, which is, okay, reminding we're talking about where Tolkien got his idea of magic, and that there's something about it coming through history, this living organism that grows through time, and that it has to do with his own personal history, which is
Hmm.
he's crediting people that taught him things. And the huge difficulty that people have in the right now present is seeing the, I just like, how am I going to say this? It was coming to me when you were talking. Practicing seeing this growth where all of these ideas came from, and that my own
Hmm.
personal experience in saying to people, I've watched this growth in my studies. I've studied the growth as a historian, is um, challenging and alienating for people, which is one level of the problem. And then the other level is, then what if we've witnessed things that come into their present condition going through this process, and there was something about Christianity there. How it is that
You're
we,
talking about the development of
yeah,
doctrine.
no, but
Doctrine.
how it is that we see the things that are attached to them that, no, I've got too many layers of
You
seeds in
derailed
here.
yourself. I
Yeah,
know. I was
I've
gonna say you have too
totally
much going
derailed
on in your head.
myself. Okay, so look, I want to one. I've got some questions going on here. One of them, Sean is asking what happened to Kiltz again. Kiltz is working on other things, and she's not been in touch with us for a long time, so you'll have to ask her. Um,
Mm.
no, seriously, it's like people move on. It's. I was
We've
thinking,
been, yeah.
talking
You
about
guys started this thing.
the growth of everything, right? It's like we change cast, people have other projects that they're working on, and she will be in touch
Yeah.
when she has the new stuff that she's working on ready to show. That's the best we can
Hmm.
do. That's the best we can say.
Yeah. You guys started this 4 years ago,
Yeah,
or
we're
is it
4 years. So
3 years
we're a
ago?
tree now, right? It's like we don't even, how many layers? There's the Kiltz layer. There's the
Yes. How many branches?
how many, and which is the true mosaic arc the one that had Kiltz, or is it the one that has me all along, or is it, is it both? Is it all of the, it's like that. That's actually a good example of at what point do you say, well, it's only, if you wanted to cut it off and say the only authentic mosaic arc is the Kiltz year that she was in it, or is it, going to encompass all of the guests that we've had on now, all of the guests that we're going to be having on? It's like projecting into the future and such. I'm going to try to land this because I'm not landing this as well as I
Okay.
had it planned out. All
I'm gonna
right.
I'm gonna shut up because I feel like I derail you all the time. So I'll stop.
Well, but the thing is, okay, so one, the problem with my thinking when it's all folded in up here is it makes sense to me. And then as I've
Familiar with that
experienced in
phrase?
the
Yes.
last few weeks, if I say stuff out loud that makes sense to me, it sometimes makes people mad. That is,
And then you get mad that they don't understand,
and
and
I'm
you
like,
get
but don't
and
you see
everybody's
all the
frustrated
steps
all
here? And then
around.
I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to show you all the steps. But I was trying to show my mom the steps about time and stuff like that. And I said, happy 2026. And she said, well, give or take a few years, because what she's heard is the calendar may be slightly off. And so we don't really know that this was, Jesus's birth in 2026. Okay, fine.
So you
Right.
said happy 2026 or not, right?
It is. No, the problem that she's pointing to is a different problem from saying we're celebrating the reality of our experience in time versus when they did the correlations between the events of antiquity with the things that we're trying to understand happened in the Gospels, they got it off a little
Hmm.
bit. That's not the same thing as saying we got like we're not in time. So my point was still good, and hers was a calibration.
And mine was a joke. So
Okay. This is a problem too.
sorry. Oh.
We're maybe one day I'll just no, it's not going to happen. Okay. So, look. Most people don't know what Christianity is. Tolkien has a very clear understanding of what Christianity is. It's a living organism. For him in his life, it mattered because his mother gave him into the care of Father Francis Morgan, who was a priest at the Birmingham Oratory. What was the Birmingham Oratory? Now, one of one, it was founded by this man, John Henry Newman, in 1849, a few years after he had converted from Anglicanism to Catholicism. Tolkien's intellectual lineage comes from the most famous convert in the history of the English church in modernity. John Henry Newman has been declared a saint since 2019. He was actually canonized by by Pope Francis. And his without Newman, there would have been no Tolkien, and we wouldn't be talking about magic. The oratory, you can say it's a Birmingham oratory. It's not just that he founded an oratory where they have prayers. It's an oratory founded to the Order of St. Philip Neri, which is, somebody in the chat was actually asking about that. Yes, it's
Mhm.
I've lost where it came up in the chat. Yes, Rogue Wave. I think he had a devotion to St. Philip Neri, if I remember correctly. It's more than just his devotion to St. Philip Neri, and we need to probably, I think what we're going to have to do is like just keep talking about this over the next few weeks, which is fine with me.
Yeah, it's an order, the Oratorians.
The
aren't they?
Oratorians, and
What are
they
they
were
called?
founded by St. Philip Neri, who is a
Oh, okay.
16th century reformer and saint in the Counter Reformation Church. From whom we have basically no writings, which is a sort of interest. He's like St. Francis. We end up with that sort of difficult. But one of the few things that we do have a feeling of for him is he's the source of this sense of joy in the sort of teaching and thinking in modern Catholicism. That Tolkien, I get all of my, it's like my lineage, right? This is constantly trying to show you I get my beginning understanding of what Catholicism could mean from reading The Lord of the Rings and from studying Tolkien, because I've only been Catholic for a few, 8 years now. So in the practical terms, recently in my lifetime, I've been absorbing this reality from Tolkien. He absorbed it from Father Francis Morgan, who was a student of, go back to John Henry Newman. Morgan actually studied directly with John Henry Newman. And Newman, when he converts to Catholicism, founds this oratory, dedicates it into the Order of St. Philip Neri. And we know for certain, and Holly Ordway figured this out, that Tolkien himself is very dedicated to St. Philip Neri because he puts it in his name. We think of him as, you were talking about G.R.R. Martin and J.R.R. Tolkien. That's not Tolkien's full name. It should be J.R.P.R. Tolkien, and it's in his. It's Holly Ordway figured this out. The P is in the monogram too, that you can see. And I've got, this is the earliest printed version of the monogram, so it's the one everybody's familiar with, right? You have the J there and the two R's and the T, but there's like an extra limb in the descender. He included the P in his name. He's not J.R. Tolkien. He's J.R.P.R. Tolkien.
Was this a name he was given by his mother, or
no,
did he take that as confirmation?
I think he took it as confirmation. It's
okay.
Actually, I have Ordway. She talks about it in her book. He took it at confirmation, yeah. Taking the name Philip. So when Tolkien received the sacrament of confirmation, he took the name of Philip. There are various holy Philips in the history of Christianity, but the Philip whom Tolkien chose as confirmation saint was, in fact, St. Philip Neri, the founder of the Oratorians. And she says, Ordway says, I've checked this with Tolkien's daughter, Priscilla, who confirmed that this is the case. So when we think of him as and he went by Ronald too, right? So he's John Ronald Philip Royal Tolkien. which means we have to take not it's Catholicism, his name, and his influence by Newman way more seriously than I think we have
Yeah, that's
been
pretty incredible
doing
connection.
so far. Yeah, and what's interesting is I got to this. It's taken like us to whitter around and have a nice like hanging out chat. Um, longer than I meant. Sorry, guys. Uh, Grok did not come up with this at all. People are, except for Ordway mentioning some influence on Newman, I have not read anybody yet who has taken Newman's effect on Tolkien's thinking as seriously as, thanks to reading this over Christmas because I was having fights with people about the development of doctrine, I'm realizing that we really need to.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool addition for the new saint.
Yes. So here's our new saint, and we promised to say where Tolkien got his idea of magic from. And Casey's already been telling you some in effect of where it's coming from. Okay. Sorry, I realized I'm suddenly like super duper tired.
Well, first week back. How long has it been since we last streamed?
It's first week back from streaming, and also
And first week back for work.
well, the
For
dog is
actual.
asleep right now, but I don't get to sleep as long as he's
Oh,
making messes in the living room. Come here, kiddo.
poor Pooch.
Yeah.
Poor Pooch has a very upset tummy. Yes, he's more quiet than normal.
Well, that's because he played in the park really a lot today.
Oh,
He hadn't
no.
seen his friends in weeks either. So he's back now. Okay.
That's really cute. He has friends.
He definitely has friends, and there's some of them that play better with each other than others, and they all had a
Mm.
big long hour-long wrestle today. Okay. Yes, Robert's saying the tail shows the P in the monogram. So
Mhm.
here you go. Study. But Saint Philip Neri is in Tolkien's name. So we need to go there. Okay, we need to go back to Newman, and we need to get on the table some of the things that are going to be, I think, challenging for people to accept as necessary to understanding Christianity if you're going to understand Christianity the way Tolkien did. And I mean, this sort of interesting problem of can we claim this as reality? But anyway, I'm sorry. I need you to ask me some questions. I've never this has never quite happened that I've been so tired and I've really lost my
I was
thread.
just thinking when you said, "Well, are we accepting this as reality?" Do you mean the magic of Tolkien? Well, remember now, I am an elf denier.
You're an elf denier. Oh, that's right. No. Okay.
But if you consider, yeah, you consider the elves are part of his fictional expression of the reality of of the spiritual world, then I'm not really.
I'm trying to unpack where I need to go with this to make this.
It's essentially truth through poetry. That's what he's written. He's using folklorish and mythical ideas uh, in his story, but it's not the larger truth he's pointing towards. They're just kind of window dressing for the larger message.
Okay, that helps. There's two ways that people think, like, where does Tolkien get magic? And the usual way is the way Lewis took, which is, oh, you're going to tell these magical stories, these adventure stories. I've been reading stuff about science fiction and how it went off the rails too. And I was thinking about Stranger Things. I was thinking about Harry Potter, and I was thinking about our desire for enchantment and our desire to feel like we're
Mm-hmm.
in a world where not just the veil is ruptured or magic can happen or something like that, but where something is meaningful at all. That's
Hmm.
I had that sense of having gone to mass on New Year's Eve and then watching the Stranger Things finale and then seeing the fireworks and having just a glimpse for a moment of it's back. It's like that feeling that I remember when I was growing up and younger and everything had mystery and wonder and meaning and pointing to something. And I'm sorry to confess, guys, it's fleeting sometimes at the moment right now. It just seems the world has gone very, very gray and sad, and I don't entirely understand why.
Hmm.
Have you felt that? It just like everybody's I don't even know whether it's the political situation or it's the media situation or it's personal animosities that have boiled over because of pressures about other things that don't even have anything to do with any of those political things. My dog. Um,
All of the above.
yeah, but doesn't it feel like the world is tired right now? Are we tired of the same, these conflicts and the
I think everybody in the world who does these kinds of things have been nipping at each other's heels for
yeah,
so long
there it
that
is.
they're now actually standing up saying, "No, I don't want to nip at your heels. I want to punch you in the face." And it's escalated more. Um, well, there's always a war going on between good and evil. This is where fiction comes in really handy of expressing it in a way that people actually want to read it and see it and not shun away from it if it's done well, like Tolkien has done.
Right.
They don't, you want to turn the pages and find out, that there's still good in this world. His words, right? Samwise Gamgee's words to uh, to Frodo. They were filling it 100 years ago, when he first started getting an idea for these stories,
Oh
and
yeah,
he
and
wrote
they're
them
feeling
down
it
in the
200 years
40s.
ago when Newman was getting his ideas. And we're feeling
Yes,
this
yeah, and I think when you have so much historical knowledge, it would be easy to get tired and say, "Can we stop now?" It's exhausting because 200 years, 400 years, 50 years ago, it's all swirling around in your head at the same time when you read enough about this stuff.
well, that's true. That's true. But
It's easy to get tired. It's easy to notice it constantly, and it's hard to not notice it. So those fleeting moments where you just go, "Ah, this is nice. This reminds me of when I was young in the world, and I don't remember any of this stuff." It's great. Those are fleeting moments, but they're also a foretaste of heaven, aren't they?
I don't know really. I mean, I know what Dante says. The no the so some of the magic you could say he gets his magic from that feeling of childhood, but that's not where he gets it. That's I don't think Tolkien's sense of magic is childhood wonder.
Oh, I don't think so either.
Although, I mean, the Harry Potter stories rely on it's like their magic gets more powerful as they grow up and more dark. But the I
Hmm.
think the reason that people loved it, I mean, it's like the and this the all of this is folding in for the Stranger Things too for me. They were more fun when the actors were kids and the story was about kids, and you get to be older, and it's all about dreary adult stuff.
Everybody complained, when those later books and movies came out that it's so dark. It's so dark now. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's a story about a guy who tries to murder a baby and misses. He goes
yeah,
up to kill him, right? And to defeat the monster. You're going to have to see the monster at some point. Also, the kids are going to grow up. That's what
right.
kids do.
But
It
then
was
when
a
we
it
grow
was a
up,
great arc. It was a
do
great story arc.
people want Christianity to feel that childlike too? And then you grow up and it's all these fights about particulars of how the Holy Spirit processes or not, and whether or not Mary's immaculately conceived, and whether or not you should fast, and whether or not you should, you know, going to Presbyterian is, of course, like you have no mass, you have communion, but you have and no art, but you have scripture study, and that I think I was feeling all through Christmas all of these fragmented realities and I guess the magic for me is I want to be able to sit under that tree that Tolkien has and feel it all in
Hmm.
this one living growth instead of things that people hack apart and get mad at you for not, if you see all the tree and then they don't see the whole tree and then they get mad at you because you're insisting there's a tree there.
I'm sure Tolkien went through all of that. He
Well, he
still he
did
still sat under a tree.
because he learned it from Newman, I think. And this is
Mm.
the deep backstory on this is we live in time. We live in a reality that has been, it's this magnificent organism that's also an artifact of human engagement and debate and difficulty. And Newman himself went through, I mean, he lost it. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Why is this so strangely difficult tonight?
I
Because
don't
I
know.
don't know. I mean, this is so funny. It's almost like a collapsing of the problem. I do nothing but talk about history all the time, and I want to tell you something about history, and I want to tell you something about the way Newman thought about the development of doctrine, which is where Tolkien gets his image of that tree, and I can't do
Isn't
it.
it interesting Philip Neri didn't leave anything in writing, and yet he's known for joy? Hmm.
And we're sort of collapsing into the moment of
Yeah, we're collapsing. Like, where are the books? Where are the books? What does it say?
where
I
are the
need to.
books?
But Philip Neri's
Yes.
like, you don't need the books. You need God, right? I'm assuming, right?
Well, I don't know. I haven't read. So one of Tolkien's
Mm.
friends and Morgan's friends, Louis Boyer, did a biography of Neri, which I have, but I haven't read it yet. And this, I think what I'm doing. So okay, so 5 things are happening. One of which is in this present moment, we're losing all these references that we have that we can hang the stories on, that we can make the connections to, so that things make sense to us anymore. They've gone
Mhm.
like this all into the internet, and they're all there constantly, all at the same time, and they don't feel like they have roots anymore. And so I'm trying to get to that.
Mhm.
I'm trying to, I mean, this week teaching my class, we're starting with the 18th century and dealing with like, where do all our ideas come from when they're shaped by Christianity, but no, we don't recognize them as having those roots anymore. Like Rousseau and
Right.
his social contract is actually Calvinist Geneva, but he doesn't ever admit it except in a footnote. So it's actually a theocracy, and yet he says
That's
religion is
funny.
stupid and superstitious. And you're just
That's
like,
hilarious.
how many times can I flip the world back onto its
Back onto what?
I
Where
don't,
was it?
where was it? Well, I want to find a passage from Newman that will help us.
And the only constant is change, right?
That's it. I love when you do that. We're arguing about
Probably the Holy
change.
Spirit. I'm not that smart.
Well, that's fine. We're constantly arguing about change and how to explain it. That's what all of these. Oh my gosh, guys, she just did it. Thank you for hanging with us for 2 hours so that Casey could say that. And
Took me. The subcontext is it took her 2 hours.
for you to say it or for me to say it?
Me, not you.
No. Well, the thing, but okay, no, but the problem is, no, the real problem is understanding comes when you've put all of this things into the right relationship. You've collected all of it there. You've mulled it over. I mean, Tolkien has this, great image of growth. It takes time, right? Growth takes time. We can't get to this like huge and
Mhm.
great and magnificent, beautiful insight if I said basically, and Casey's already premised it. The reason Tolkien gets his idea of magic from Newman's description of early Christianity, which is that the earliest evidence that we have of Christianity is that it was a superstition. And I will read at the
Right.
end the great passage when I went like, whoa, that's it. That's where Tolkien gets his idea of magic. It's because Christianity is always showing itself to the world as if it's actually magical, and it's distrusted by the world. It's just like the wizards in Harry Potter all being distrusted and considered like outlandish and terrifying by the Muggles, and that Christianity, when it bursts into the world, is that terrifying.
Right. And the Aryans accused them of prestidigitations.
Magic,
Too.
right?
That was also in there. Right.
So if you're looking for primitive Christianity, like the Protestants want to, what you're going to find is not, oh my gosh, the Catholicism is paganism corrupting Christianity, and by the way, in the 16th century we can just get rid of all this Catholicism because it's been the corrupted thing, and we are going to find the pure true thing. If you go back and look at the actual primitive Christianity, you'll realize it's the thing that you think it's Catholic. Right. It's like getting to the place where,
Right.
as Newman did in his own understanding, which is what happened for Tolkien, which is what happened for why we can't see Christianity properly anymore, is you flip the world wrong. And that flip is very, very, I mean, someone was saying in the chat, if you, Rogue Wave saying, I think it's a fear of consequence of acknowledging the truth and realizing that means for change is needed in their lives. It scares them. It's terrifying. And it's super duper terrifying, because what nobody has ever been able to explain philosophically ever in the history of humanity is change. And you say the reality of doctrine for Tolkien, the reality of doctrine for Newman, that we're trying to get to, and we're trying to unpack and explain for you all so you don't trip out and say, oh, well, it's just paganism, is how something can develop in time and actually grow. And that it's what Vox Day is worrying about with the evolution stuff, right? We haven't been able to explain change over time well at all, because we don't have any idea of seeds and growth and organisms anymore. Who knows what we're doing? We're just like making robots, and we want to have them solve everything for us. We will leave you with two thoughts, and we'll come back to this next week to deal with this, right? Okay.
I just want to enchant our machines to do our labor for us.
We can't enchant our machines to do our labor for us. They can't do it. We've established that. They don't know the questions to ask.
It's Sorcerer Mickey, right? Fantasia.
Yes. Okay. No, that's not it. Okay, so this is the problem of why Christianity is so hard to see. And this is what Newman trying to explain, the idea of development at all, right? That there is such a thing as a development, a growth, a magnificent tree that's growing here. And that there can actually be developments at all. He says, on the probability of developments in Christianity. If Christianity is a fact and can be made subject matter of exercises of the reason, and impresses an idea of itself on our minds, that idea will, in course of time, develop in a series of ideas connected and harmonious with one another, unchangeable and complete, as is the external fact itself, which is thus represented. Remember, Tolkien said, the history of a divine thing is sacred. So there's something sacred in change in time, but is still expressing the divinity. It is the peculiarity of the human mind that it cannot take an object in which is submitted to it simply and integrally. It conceives by means of definition or description. Whole objects do not create in the intellect whole ideas, but are, to use a mathematical phrase, thrown into series, into a number of statements, strengthening, interpreting, correcting each other, and with more or less exactness approximating as they accumulate to a perfect image. There is no other way of learning or of teaching. We cannot teach except by aspects or views which are not identical with the thing itself which we are teaching. Two persons will convey the same truth to another, yet by methods and through representations altogether different. The same person will treat the same argument differently in an essay or speech, according to the accent of the day of writing or of the audience, yet it will be the same. And the more a claim an idea has to be considered living, the more various will be its aspects, and the more social and political is its nature, the more complicated and subtle will be its developments, and the longer and more eventful will be its course. Such is Christianity. And whatever has been said in the last chapter about the development of ideas generally becomes, of course, an antecedent argument for its progressive development. So if it's a fact, it's going to have these properties that include development and change and different aspects, and the difficulty of seeing the thing clearly of itself because it's developing over time in people's understanding.
Mhm.
So he then applies this to the history of Christianity, and that's what the chapter that you read that we're going to have to go back to and talk about more, I
Mhm.
think. I made you do homework,
Yeah, it was
Miriam.
a fun one. No, like I said, it takes me 2 and 3 times to understand it fully. So
Where did Tolkien get his idea of magic? Why is Christianity so hard to see? How would you convince someone, as Newman is actually trying to do, he's trying to convince himself, that Catholicism is in fact in Christianity's primitive form, the real thing. And he plays this amazing clip. So you were talking about how the ancient authors all saw Christianity
yes, that's superstition.
as itself superstition, and there's
Right. But they saw a lot of the pagan religions, especially the ones from the East, to be superstitious in Egypt. Well, the Egyptian ones were pretty bad. They were pretty ticked off about Bacchus, those rites,
well, okay, but
being brought into Rome.
if we say it that way, it sounds like, okay, so Christianity is just another of the mystery religions, and of course,
That's
therefore,
the way they
it's
saw it,
superstitious.
right? And that was my question. It's like, so for the people saying today, oh, they're just, they're just taking these ideas from the pagans, right? And, they're what would Newman say to that? I wonder, because I only read one chapter. So I have to read the whole book. What would he say to people in current day, um, saying to the Christians that the pagan religions were much better because they had
I
all of
think we're going to
these
have to do a part 2 here.
rituals and
This is
yeah.
our
Well, it's very much related to what we're writing too.
yes.
So,
Yes. Well, so
yeah.
our chat is being very kind. So Robert Montgomery is saying, so Tolkien appears to be looking to the long past of Christian reality. Yes, that's what we're trying to get to.
Yes, that's well said.
That's
Yeah.
very well said. Sarah says, I think we're all tired because we're bombarded with so much more information than we can handle comfortably. Yes,
True.
absolutely. Leaper Lang, this is golden, great content. Well, I'm happy because we bit off more than we could chew in 2 hours. To get to the source of the reality in the world. Oh, no problem. We can figure that out in 2 hours. That
No problem. Yeah, we'll have it done in 2 hours, right?
Tolkien looking for continuity in history, Stranger Things, the Hobbits living under. Okay, so I think we're gonna have to do it to be continued here. It's like just the
It's a good start.
right. And I think what's funny about this is I think this is the best I can do tonight, because this is the sort of where we are right now, right? It's the feeling that I was having right on New Year's Eve. And it sort of it's like the happy feeling lasted for about an hour, and then the family had some discussions about a variety of things. That there was both hope and a kind of sorrow that I was feeling for the world, which we're in right now. And I was trying to aim us to Tolkien's Christmas letter for 1926, which I realized is like the year we're in now. It's 100 years later. And
Wow.
yeah,
True.
it's 100 years later, and there's Tolkien's image of Father Christmas and in the great, aurora, the aurora of Christmas night, and we're trying to figure out how to access that and feel it again, and wondering why it's so difficult. But a lot of it is like we've gone through this, like whatever has happened in the last year, particularly the immediate last year, but in the last decade, in the last 100 years, the world's different. The world has changed.
Tolkien is a good person to learn from, and because it changed a heck of a lot more radically for him in 2020, I mean 1926, right? There's that picture of all of the heads of the royal families of Europe, and they were at a funeral, I think,
Mm,
in England, and that was the last picture of all of them together. I think there are only three of those monarchies, or maybe four, survived, and everything in Europe changed. Catholic Europe was devastated, hasn't
yep.
recovered fully yet. And so the things that he went through were much more radically changing, than anything we're seeing. We're in the tail end of it, I hope, right? Or don't I? I'm not sure yet. And that unsurety is probably what's fueling a lot of anxiety, because people don't like seeing this. And we have been bombarded with a lot of social unrest and a lot of demagoguery and just a strange dictatorship, even in this country,
Mm,
that happened over the past 10 years. And a lot of people like to wield that word dictatorship. But if they were to take a rational look at everything that happened over the past 10 years, and we did discuss this last year when we talked about riot season,
mm-hmm.
they'd see there was something different about it, because they were requiring people to ignore the reality of their eyes and basically do what George Orwell predicted, right? To say
Right.
2 + 2 = 5, and that was something that was never done to us before. Um, so that's a bit different. But as far as huge geopolitical and social upheaval goes, I think Tolkien went through more, than we're going through. It's just a more obvious psychological and spiritual level that people, if they look, can see now, and that's really unnerving. You can understand a building blowing up. It's a little bit hard to understand an entire society being told to ignore the reality of their vision, their own eyes, and pretend something is there that isn't.
Well, I feel like I mean,
That's
you
a
say that's what we're having to live through right now.
Yes,
We don't
and
know
we've been
what's
having to live
true.
through that.
We can't. It's like we're in this horrible.
I know what a man and a woman is.
Yeah. Well, yes,
Yeah, I
but
know what a vaccine is, which is why I didn't take the COVID one, because it wasn't a vaccine. Stuff like that,
yeah.
and I was proved when they changed the definition of vaccine to meet the rollout they had already done. So, I mean, and then you were supposed to ignore that happened and pretend that didn't happen and say, no, no, no. So it's totally a vaccine, and it's on a very personal level. That feels like a massive demonic oppression over the entire world. So when people are in an active hot war, they can see it. We're in more of a spiritual war, and you can feel it. And it feels icky, and it feels wrong, because it is. It's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it started with the apple, but more recently, it started with people trying to change the world and build it back better, starting about 1900. It's we're I think we're I do think we're at the tail end of that. I think we're seeing the results of a lot of that. There, people are still trying to tear everything down. I I'm not even sure they remember why, but they're still doing it.
Well, my hope was to get from the 1926 Christmas image to the image that's actually in the apse in the Birmingham Oratory, which is of Mary's reception into heaven and coronation. And that painting was made, I think, after Tolkien was living there. I think that they finished the church after he'd grown up and gone off to war or gone off to college. Um, the strong sense I have is the one that I think Newman tried to point to in that chapter that you read that we'll talk about next time. Of
Mhm.
everybody, you can do homework and then you can know what we're talking about. That the reality that we see and that Christianity shows us looks to the world like all of the superstitions and magic that it accuses us of, which, did this nice flip for me with the Weasleys and Harry Potter. It's like you're in this world that's magic, but you can't see it. But that
Right.
the truth of the church is going to be look to the world like all of the things that Catholicism actually has been, and that the accusations that the church, it's like very Chestertonian, the accusations that people bring against the church of being magical are the ones that have always been brought against it, and so therefore it's the true one. And you're like, I don't know how to fold this enough times so that it suddenly becomes available so that I can explain it to my Presbyterian family, or people who don't have the faith. And that, I realize, that was always Tolkien's long exercise, and it's our continuing exercise here. And it's interesting that it's left me so tongue tied by the end. I don't think I've ever gotten quite this tongue tied in the outset. Um, Yeah, we're gonna just have to stop. It's like Robert Montgomery saying, "I love this image." Which one? The lack of repentance in the postmodern leaves people unmoored. It's only point and blame now. Subjectivism is a right response, but lacks the grounding of subjective in the pre-modern. We
Mhm.
are we are the okay. So this is our opening for this year in 2026
People think, yeah,
is to, I don't know, what are we in search of now?
that's just it. People know something's wrong, but they can't articulate it. They can't articulate it through the lens of the modern world. They can only articulate it through the lens of Christianity, more specifically through Catholicism.
Mm-hmm. But that
Yeah, the
it's
lenses get a little more clearer.
we're gonna have to keep working on this. This is a good mission for
Mhm.
the year. Um,
Yeah,
and
because I think it's what Tolkien was trying to do with his
yes,
stories.
but the funny thing is I thought of all the things that I wanted to ever explain, the development of doctrine would be the easiest because that's what I work on, and it turned out to be the thing that's most difficult to grasp. Even though for me, Tolkien's metaphor of it as a tree has always been completely persuasive, and I want to understand why that isn't as persuasive for others as it was for me, if that makes sense.
But maybe with like Grok, you have to ask the right question.
Indeed. Okay, guys. So thanks for joining us. Sorry that we sort of, the web spun out of my control, and I couldn't land this plane. We will not land. The readers should decide. No, we will land this and think about
We're
it.
gliding.
We're
We're
we're we're
gliding.
we're gliding now into the future. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next week.